Ever get that creepy feeling like the internet is reading your mind?
Yeah.
Well, imagine if it was actually writing everything you read, too.
Oh,
That's kind of the
God.
unsettling future we're diving into today with investigative journalist Whitney Webb.
Right.
She argues that we're on this, like, fast track to a world where almost everything online is, get this, AI generated.
Yeah. And controlled by just a select few, too, which is,
It's easy to dismiss that as, like, conspiracy theory stuff.
right.
But Webb's not just some random tech writer. She's been digging into the deep web for years.
Yeah. She really gets into like the nitty gritty of where the power is, where the information's flowing.
And she's sounding the alarm about a potential major shift in how our whole society functions.
Yeah.
Which is why we wanted to really unpack this, especially this one stat that jumped out at me. 96%
96%. It's crazy.
of online content being AI generated by next year.
Next year.
Next year. Imagine, like, you're scrolling through your social media feed.
Yeah.
You're clicking on news articles, maybe checking out those product reviews.
Yeah.
All of it crafted by algorithms instead of actual humans.
It's like we're on the verge of this weird inversion where machines aren't just like mimicking us, mimicking human creativity. They're becoming the primary architects of our digital world. And what's crucial here is that it's not just about efficiency or even convenience, really.
Right.
It's about who controls the narratives, the stories that shape how we understand the world.
So instead of getting those, hot takes from your Uncle Frank on Facebook, you're getting the algorithm's very carefully curated version of reality.
Exactly. And that's where Webb's concept of AI censorship comes in. It's not some Orwellian overlord deleting stuff. It's more subtle.
Okay.
It's algorithms, right? Deciding what we see and don't see
Yeah.
based on who knows what criteria.
And we've all seen that already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the way these social media platforms tweak their algorithms.
All the time.
And suddenly your feed is flooded with certain types of content.
Yeah.
Like one day it's all like adorable puppy videos. The next, it's like everyone's arguing about the latest political
Oh,
scandal.
it's exact. Yeah, precisely. Now imagine that, but on a much larger scale.
Oh, wow.
With these algorithms potentially, amplifying or suppressing information to influence public opinion, elections even. Webb argues that we are handing the keys to the kingdom over to these tech giants.
Yeah.
And honestly, you don't fully understand how they're going to use them.
It's a little bit like giving a toddler a loaded weapon, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you hope for the best,
Right.
but deep down you're like, this is probably not going to end well.
Yeah, and it gets even, more interesting when you look at the connections Webb draws
Okay.
between this whole rise of AI that we're talking about and the growing influence of corporate giants
Like
BlackRock, for instance.
BlackRock.
But
Okay, now we're getting into the really juicy stuff.
Yeah.
Are those who haven't heard of them, what's the deal with this financial behemoth?
so simplest terms, they're this massive investment management firm.
Right.
But we're talking trillions of dollars in assets.
Really?
To put it in perspective, they manage more money than the entire GDP of most countries.
Wow.
Webb really digs into their influence.
Yeah.
Raises questions about their involvement, for example, in the 2019 monetary policy plan.
Wait, rewind that for a second. They're involved in shaping government policy.
Well, that's what Webb's research seems to suggest. She highlights how BlackRock basically helped craft a plan back in 2019. And then, lo and behold, what happens during the COVID-19 response?
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve seemingly follows their playbook almost to the letter.
Huh.
It's enough to make you wonder if it was all just a coincidence.
Okay, I'm starting to see why we're talking about BlackRock alongside AI. Like we're talking about concentrated power here.
Massive power, yeah.
Potentially influencing both the information we consume and the very policies that govern our lives.
Exactly. And it's not just about them,
Right.
They're kind of like a symptom, right, of a larger system that allows this type of corporate consolidation where profit is king,
Right.
potentially ahead of, pretty much everything else.
And that's where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just about one company or even one industry.
Right.
It's like a whole system that seems to be tilting towards this crazy concentration of power.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what happens when, a handful of corporations potentially have this much sway over government policy?
Yeah.
Especially on things like economic recovery.
Exactly.
What does that even mean for everyday people like you and me?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And that's what Webb, she argues that all this concentration of power, it creates a perfect storm
Okay.
for potential crises in the future.
Okay, hold on. Before we go full doomsday prepper here,
Right.
what kind of crises are we even talking about?
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, after the whole COVID situation,
Right.
I don't know if my nerves can handle another round of panic buying and toilet paper shortages.
Yeah, no, and to be fair, Webb's not necessarily talking about zombies or,
Right.
societal collapse or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
more about, I think, acknowledging the vulnerabilities that the pandemic, it exposed.
Yeah.
Things that maybe we weren't really thinking about before.
Right.
Think about the supply chain disruptions.
Oh, yeah.
We saw empty grocery store shelves,
Yeah.
economic instability, and, frankly, even the social unrest that we saw bubbling up
Yeah.
in so many places.
Okay, yeah, those are definitely not things you want to see happening again. But I'm still like, how does this all tie back to,
Right.
AI and corporations like BlackRock?
So imagine this, right?
Okay.
Another major disruption hits,
Okay.
whether it's, another pandemic or a natural disaster.
Right.
Maybe it's a cyber attack or something we haven't even,
Right.
anticipated yet.
Right. Yeah.
Suddenly, those supply chains, they're strained again.
Oh, yeah.
The markets are in turmoil.
Yeah.
People are starting to panic.
Yeah.
Now, layer on top of that, the potential for AI-driven misinformation.
Oh.
Right. Amplifying the fear, the uncertainty, maybe even inciting violence, unrest.
Wow.
And then ask yourself, who's really in the best position to weather that storm
Right.
and potentially even profit from it?
The very corporations and financial institutions that have been consolidating power all along.
Right.
It's like they're playing chess while the rest of us are trying to figure out checkers.
Exactly. And that's why, Webb really stresses the importance of preparedness.
Okay.
Not in a doomsday prepper kind of way,
Right.
but in terms of how do we build more resilience,
Okay.
both as individuals and as a society.
Okay.
It's about asking yourself, what did we learn from the past few years?
Right.
What systems in my life maybe broke down?
Yeah.
How can I make them more resilient?
So it's less about stocking up on canned goods
Right.
and more about diversifying our skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Building those community connections, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Having that emergency fund, maybe you explore an alternative income stream,
Right.
strengthening your local networks. These are all steps that you can take
Right.
to be better prepared no matter what the future throws at us.
Right.
And it's not just about individual preparedness. It's also about demanding more from,
Right.
the institutions. Right.
Yeah.
That wields so much power. We need more transparency, more accountability.
So while we're busy prepping our emergency kits, brushing up on our sourdough bread baking skills from the pandemic,
There you go.
what are these AI systems up to?
Because, we can't talk about AI's potential impact without addressing, the elephant in the room here,
Right.
which is the ethical implications.
Absolutely. And this is where I think it gets really, interesting, but also
Yeah.
a little unnerving, to be honest.
Okay.
We're already seeing AI being used in ways that, I think were once confined to just science fiction.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking autonomous weapons systems, facial recognition technology that's being used by law enforcement,
Right.
and even social credit systems
Yeah.
that are starting to emerge in some parts of the world.
It's giving me some serious, Black Mirror vibes, right? Like that episode where the social credit score determines everything.
From your job prospects to whether your, robot vacuum cleaner gives you the good suction or not.
Right.
It's funny because it's terrifying,
Yeah.
But seriously, what are the real world implications here
Well, you're
of AI being used in these really sensitive areas?
Let's take AI in warfare, for example, which Webb, she really gets into this.
Okay.
On the one hand, you have these proponents, right, who say AI could make warfare more precise,
Right.
minimize collateral damage even.
Right.
Imagine, drones
Yeah.
programmed to tell the difference between a combatant and a civilian
Right.
with this crazy level of accuracy that, frankly, humans could never achieve.
Okay, so on the surface, that almost sounds like a good thing, right?
Right.
Less collateral damage in a war zone.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
But, and this is a big but, you're talking about essentially handing over life or death decisions to algorithms,
Right.
to lines of code.
Yeah.
So what happens if there's,
Right.
a glitch?
Yeah.
Or what if the data that was used to train these AI systems is biased,
Right.
reflecting existing prejudices, right?
Right. Yeah.
Suddenly you have the potential for, I mean,
Yeah.
disastrous, even deadly mistakes.
It's like, who do you even hold accountable when an algorithm makes a bad call, right?
Exactly.
Like, do we put the AI on trial?
Right.
It's a whole new level of complexity, and I don't think we're even close to, like, figuring out the
Yeah.
ethical and legal ramifications of all this.
It's uncharted territory for sure. And then you've got the whole social credit system thing, which, arguably is even more unsettling because it hits closer to home
Yeah.
for most people. Imagine, right, a world where your access to resources,
Right.
maybe even basic services, is determined by an algorithm
Wow.
that's constantly monitoring your behavior,
Huh.
your online activity,
Right.
your social interactions.
So instead of worrying about, like, what my credit score is, I'm stressing over my, like, social score.
Right.
It's like, did I get, like, penalized for, reposting that one meme?
Right, exactly.
Or for not liking my neighbor's cat pictures online?
Mhm.
It sounds absurd, but knowing how fast technology moves, it's like
Yeah.
we're just a stone's throw away from this kind of reality.
And I think that's what's, I think so valuable about Webb's work.
Yeah.
She's not presenting this as like, this is the dystopian future that we're inevitably marching toward.
Right.
She's urging us to think critically
Yeah.
about the choices, we're making today, individually, but also collectively.
Right.
Because the future's not set in stone. It's something that we are creating.
So where do we go from here then?
Right.
I mean, if these trends, the AI dominance, corporate influence, these potential crises,
Yeah.
if they are as concerning as Webb suggests they are, what can we even do about it? I mean, most of us aren't, tech billionaires or like government officials calling the shots.
That's the thing, though. You don't have to be in a position of power to make a difference. It starts with, awareness.
Right.
It's educating ourselves about these technologies, the implications.
Right.
It's about supporting journalists like Whitney Webb who are shining a light on these issues. It's about demanding, more transparency, accountability from the institutions that are shaping our future.
It's about, like, taking ownership over our digital lives.
There you go.
Being mindful of the information that we're consuming, questioning the narratives that we're being fed, staying engaged, staying informed, even when, the truth is uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And on that note, for those listening who, maybe are intrigued, even a little alarmed by what we talked about today, I urge you, don't just take our word for it.
Right.
Dive into Whitney Webb's work yourselves. We'll be sure to link to some of her articles, interviews, all that good stuff in the show notes.
Yes, go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But maybe, like, have a cup of tea and a stress ball handy because it can get pretty wild down there. But that's a wrap on this deep dive into the world of Whitney Webb's predictions. It's been quite a ride.
It has. Until next time, everybody, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly,
Be engaged.